The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up toward the ceiling. Some had wings. Others had tentacles. A few looked like walking crystals that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. But today, all their different eyes were looking at one small group sitting in the center of the hall. The humans sat perfectly still. Ambassador Sarah Chen kept her hands folded on the table in front of her. She had been sitting there for 3 hours while alien after alien stood up to speak against her people. Her back hurt. Her head hurt. But she kept her face calm and empty. "The humans are too violent," said the tall blue creature at the speaking platform. His name was something with too many clicking sounds for human tongues to say. He was from a planet where they grew their cities instead of building them. They solved problems with weapons instead of words. Sarah wanted to laugh, but she did not. She remembered the last war between his people and their neighbors. It had lasted for 60 years. The humans had ended it in 6 months by sitting both sides down and making them talk, but nobody wanted to remember that today. A creature that looked like a walking flower took the platform next. Her voice sounded like singing even when she was angry. "Humans change planets to suit themselves. They do not respect the natural way of things." Sarah thought about the dead worlds her people had brought back to life, the poisoned oceans they had cleaned, the dying suns they had helped burn brighter. But the flower woman did not mention any of that. More aliens spoke. They talked about human ships being too fast, human trade being too aggressive, human diplomats asking too many questions, human scientists learning too quickly, human children growing up too curious about things beyond their world. Each speaker added another crime to the list. The humans were too loud, too quiet, too friendly, too distant, too willing to fight, too eager for peace. It seemed like everything the humans did was wrong somehow. Sarah looked around the hall. Some of the aliens would not meet her eyes. They shifted in their seats and looked at their hands or tentacles or whatever they had. These ones knew the truth. They knew what the humans really did for the galaxy, but they were too scared to speak up. Others stared at her with hate or fear. These ones believed the lies their leaders told them. They thought humans were monsters who would destroy everything good in the galaxy if they were not stopped. And some aliens looked bored. They did not care about humans one way or the other. They just wanted the meeting to end so they could go home to their own planets and their own problems. High above them all, 12 massive beings sat on thrones that seemed to be made of starlight itself. These were the Council of 12, the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. Each one was old beyond counting. Each one had seen entire species rise and fall. And today, each one was deciding what to do about the humans. The first council member spoke. His voice was like rocks falling down a mountain. "We have heard the evidence. Humans are a danger to galactic peace." The second council member nodded. She looked like a woman made of silver water. "They spread too quickly. They asked too many questions. They changed too many things. They do not know their place," said the third council member. He was covered in scales that changed color when he moved. One by one, each council member spoke. They said humans were too young to understand the galaxy, too wild to follow the old rules, too strange to live among civilized beings. Sarah felt something cold growing in her chest. She had known this was coming. The human government had known this was coming. But hearing it still felt like a punch to the stomach. The leader of the council stood up. He was taller than any human, with skin that looked like the night sky full of stars. When he spoke, everyone in the hall became silent. "The council has made its decision," he said. "Humans will no longer be welcome in galactic space. All human colonies outside your home system must be abandoned. All human ships must return to Earth. All human citizens must leave the worlds of other species." The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens cheered. Others looked worried. A few seemed shocked, like they had not expected it to go this far. Sarah stood up slowly. The hall grew quiet again. Everyone wanted to hear what she would say. "How long do we have?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. "1 galactic standard year," the council leader said. "After that, any human found outside your home system will be arrested. Any human ship will be destroyed." Sarah nodded. She looked around the hall one more time, at the aliens who had condemned her people, at the ones who had stayed silent, at the council members who thought they were solving a problem. "You will regret this," she said quietly. But somehow her voice carried to every corner of the huge hall. The council leader laughed. It sounded like thunder. "Will we?" What can you possibly do to us? You are one small species. We are thousands of civilizations working together. Sarah picked up her folder of papers. The other human diplomats stood up too. There were only 12 of them, but they moved like soldiers, like people who knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. You think you know us, Sarah said. She was backing toward the exit now, but her eyes never left the council leader's face. You think you have seen what we can do, but you have only seen what we wanted you to see. Some of the aliens were getting nervous now. They did not like the way Sarah was talking. They did not like the way the humans were not begging or crying or acting defeated. We came here hoping you would be reasonable, Sarah continued. We hoped you would remember all the times we helped you, all the problems we solved for you, all the enemies we stopped before you even knew they existed. The hall was completely quiet now. Even the council members were leaning forward to listen. But you have chosen to make us your enemy, Sarah said. She was at the door now. So be it, but remember this day. Remember that you did this to yourselves. The human diplomats walked out of the hall. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. The great doors closed behind them with a sound like a coffin lid slamming shut. For a long moment, nobody in the hall moved. Then the aliens began to talk again. Some seemed happy. They had gotten rid of the dangerous humans. Others looked worried. They wondered if maybe they had made a mistake. High on their thrones, the Council of 12 looked pleased with themselves. They had solved the human problem. The galaxy would be peaceful now, orderly, safe. None of them knew that in 3 months, they would be begging the humans to come back. None of them knew that the humans had been protecting them from things far worse than anything they could imagine. None of them knew that by driving away the humans, they had just signed the death warrant for half the galaxy, but they would learn soon enough. 3 weeks had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Assembly. At first, nobody noticed anything different. The galaxy kept spinning. Ships kept flying between the stars. Trade kept flowing from world to world. But then the silence began. It started small. A human trading post near the Vega system went dark. The aliens who ran the nearby space station thought maybe their communications had broken down. These things happened sometimes. They sent a repair ship to check. The repair ship found the trading post empty, not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. Like the humans had packed up everything and left in the middle of the night. But that was impossible. The trading post had thousands of people working there. How do you move thousands of people without anyone noticing? The same thing happened at a human research station in the Centauri cluster. Then at a human diplomatic office on Kepler Prime. Then at human settlements scattered across dozens of systems. One by one, every human presence in the galaxy simply vanished. The aliens in charge of galactic communications tried to contact Earth. They sent messages through the quantum relay network that connected all the worlds. The messages went out like always, but no answers came back. They tried sending ships to the edge of human space. The ships came back with strange reports. There were no human patrol vessels where there should have been dozens. No response signals from human navigation beacons. No sign that humans had ever been in those systems at all. It was like an entire species had just disappeared. On Nexus Prime, the capital world of the galaxy, the Council of 12 held emergency meetings. They sat in their crystal chamber high above the city and tried to understand what was happening. Perhaps they are simply following our orders, said Councillor Vex. He was the one who looked like he was made of silver water. We told them to leave. They are leaving. This quickly? Asked Councillor Thane. His scales were dark red today, which meant he was worried. How do you move billions of people in 3 weeks? Councillor Zara, whose skin held the light of distant stars, leaned forward. Maybe we do not understand human technology as well as we thought. Down in the city below, ordinary aliens were starting to notice that things were different. The coffee shops that served human-style drinks were closing down. The restaurants that made human food were running out of ingredients. The entertainment centers that showed human movies and music were going quiet. But it was more than that. Small things were going wrong all over the galaxy. The atmospheric processors on Rigel 7 started making strange noises. The ones that kept the air breathable for the crystal people who lived there. Human technicians had always maintained those machines. Now there were no human technicians to call. The quantum computers on Tau Ceti began showing error messages that nobody could understand. The messages were in human programming languages that other species had never bothered to learn. The solar collectors around Wolf 359 started losing efficiency. They had been designed by human engineers 50 years ago. Now those engineers were gone, and nobody else knew how to fix them. At first, the aliens thought these were just minor problems. Machines broke down sometimes. They would figure out how to fix them, but the problems kept getting bigger. Trade ships started getting lost in hyperspace. The navigation systems that guided them through the dangerous areas between stars were failing. Those systems had been built by humans, maintained by humans, updated by humans. Without them, ships had to take longer, more dangerous routes. Some ships never made it to their destinations at all. Pirates began attacking merchant vessels and systems that had been safe for decades. The patrol ships that used to stop them were nowhere to be found. Those patrol ships had been human vessels, working quietly to keep the trade routes safe. Worse, strange energy readings started appearing on the edges of known space. Things that had been dormant for centuries were beginning to stir. Ancient warning beacons that had been silent for so long that most aliens had forgotten they existed began to transmit again. Dr. Kethvar was one of the few aliens who paid attention to these warnings. He was a tall, thin being with too many eyes and a brain that was very good at seeing patterns. He worked for the Galactic Science Council, studying the history of the galaxy. Late at night in his laboratory, Dr. Kethvar looked at star charts that showed where the strange energy readings were coming from. He cross-referenced them with historical data about ancient threats that had once menaced the galaxy. What he found made his many eyes widen with fear. Every single energy reading was coming from a location where historical records showed something called guardian stations had once existed. These stations had been built to watch over dangerous things. Things that needed to be kept asleep or contained or prevented from spreading. But according to the records, those guardian stations had all been destroyed or abandoned long ago. The threats they watched over had been eliminated. The galaxy was safe, except the energy readings suggested that was not true. The threats were still there. They had just been sleeping, and something had been keeping them asleep. Dr. Kethvar pulled up more historical records. He looked for any mention of who had been maintaining these guardian stations in recent years, who had been keeping the ancient threats contained. The answer, when he found it, made his blood freeze. Humans. For the past 200 years, humans had been quietly maintaining guardian stations throughout the galaxy. Stations that other species had forgotten existed. Stations that watched over dangers too terrible for most aliens to even think about. Dr. Kethvar tried to call the Science Council to report his findings, but the communication lines were jammed. Too many alien governments were trying to contact each other about the growing problems in their systems. He tried to send an emergency message to the Council of 12, but his message was lost in the flood of panic reports coming in from across the galaxy. Meanwhile, far beyond the edge of known space, Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of a ship that did not appear on any galactic registry. Around him, displays showed the status of every human fleet, every human installation, every human operation that the galaxy had never known existed. "Sir," said his communications officer, "the extraction is complete. Every human civilian has been evacuated from galactic space. All our obvious military assets have been withdrawn." Admiral Torres nodded. He was a big man with gray hair and scars from battles the galaxy had never heard about. "And our hidden assets?" "Still in position, sir, but the automated systems are beginning to fail without maintenance. The guardian stations are going offline one by one. How long before the sleepers wake up?" The communications officer checked her displays. "First wave should emerge in approximately 6 weeks. The Devourers will probably be first. Then the reality wraiths. The stellar parasites will take longer." Admiral Torres looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had exiled his people were beginning to realize they had made a mistake, but they had no idea how big a mistake it really was. "Signal all fleets," he said quietly. "Begin Phase 2. The galaxy thought it was rid of the humans. Soon it would learn what the galaxy looked like without them. The attacks began at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time. They happened everywhere at once. Ships appeared out of nowhere in 47 different star systems. But these were not the slow, clumsy human vessels that the galaxy remembered. These ships moved like living things. They bent space around themselves and slipped through dimensions that other species did not even know existed. The first target was the Zephyrian Naval Academy on Kepler 442b. It was the most heavily defended military installation in that sector. The planetary shields could stop anything short of a supernova. The orbital defense platforms had enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. The human ships ignored all of it. They appeared inside the shield perimeter, as if the shields were not even there. Their weapons did not fire energy beams or missiles. Instead, they reached into the heart of the nearby star and pulled out streams of stellar plasma. They shaped that plasma into spears of pure fusion fire and drove them through the defense platforms like they were made of paper. Within 30 minutes, the most powerful naval base in Zephyrian space was a cloud of glowing debris, but the humans did not stop there. On Vorthik Prime, the crystal being's homeworld, human ships materialized above their capital city. The Vorthak tried to activate their reality-warping defenses. These were weapons that could change the laws of physics in a small area. They could make enemy ships suddenly exist in several dimensions at once, or trap them in time loops, or simply edit them out of existence. The human ships had shields that absorbed the reality warps and fed them back into their own weapons. When the humans fired back, they did not just destroy Vorthik buildings. They destroyed the very concepts that the buildings represented. Entire districts vanished not just from the world but from history itself. The Vorthak who lived there simply stopped having ever existed. In the Melodian system, the flower people tried to defend themselves with sonic weapons. Their entire civilization was based on music and harmony. They could create sound waves that would shatter, molecules or frequencies that would drive enemies insane. The human ships surrounded the Melodian homeworld and began to sing back, but their song was not made of sound. It was made of quantum vibrations that resonated through the structure of space itself. When they finished their song, every Melodian on the planet fell silent. Not dead, just silent, unable to make any sound ever again. Their voices had been stolen from them and given to the void between stars. The attacks were precise, surgical. The humans did not kill billions of civilians. They did not destroy entire worlds. Instead, they broke the things that each species depended on most. They took away the Zephyrians' ability to fight. They took away the Vorthak's ability to control reality. They took away the Melodians' ability to sing, and they did it all in less than 6 hours. Panic spread through the galaxy, faster than the speed of light. Emergency broadcasts went out from thousands of worlds. Military fleets scrambled to respond to attacks that were already over by the time they arrived. On Nexus Prime, the Council of 12 gathered in their emergency bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. The bunker was protected by every defensive technology known to galactic science. Force fields that could stop black holes, temporal barriers that put the bunker slightly outside normal time, reality anchors that prevented the space around it from being altered. But the council members were not feeling safe. "How is this possible?" demanded Councillor Vex. His silver body was flickering with stress patterns. "Our intelligence report said humans had no weapons like this. No ships like this." "Our intelligence was wrong," said Councillor Thane. His scales had turned black, which meant he was terrified. "We only saw what they wanted us to see." Councillor Zara's star-filled skin was dim and cold. "We have made a terrible mistake." Reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. Human fleets were attacking military targets with weapons that should not exist, ships that moved through space like ghosts, soldiers who could walk through solid matter, weapons that turned gravity itself into a crushing fist. But the most disturbing reports were about what the humans were not attacking. They were not touching civilian populations. They were not destroying trade routes. They were not occupying conquered territory. Instead, they seemed to be systematically dismantling the infrastructure that held galactic civilization together. Communication relays went dark. Not destroyed, but somehow made to forget how to transmit signals. Hyperspace jump gates shut down, their control computers rewritten with code that no one could understand. Banking networks crashed as their quantum encryption was broken by mathematics that should not be possible. Within days, the galaxy's economy collapsed. Ships could not communicate with their destinations. Money could not be transferred between worlds. Governments could not coordinate with their colonies, and then Admiral Torres sent his message. It appeared on every surviving communication device in the galaxy at the same time. Holographic displays, audio speakers, even emergency beacons that should not have been able to receive that kind of transmission. Somehow the message was everywhere at once. The Admiral appeared as a three-dimensional image in the Council's bunker. He was wearing a uniform that none of them recognized. Behind him they could see the bridge of a ship that defied everything they thought they knew about human technology. "People of the galaxy," Admiral Torres said. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made the Council members step back from their displays. "You wanted us gone. You got your wish. We are no longer citizens of your civilization. We are no longer bound by your laws. We are no longer obligated to protect you." The image paused, letting that sink in. "For 200 years, humanity has served as the immune system of this galaxy. We have fought wars you never knew about. We have stopped invasions before they reached your borders. We have contained threats that would have consumed entire sectors." Counselor Zara made a choking sound. "That is impossible. We would have known." The Admiral's image turned to look directly at her, even though that should not have been possible in a recorded message. "Would you? Did you know about the Void Cult that tried to sacrifice the Rigel system to their dark gods 30 years ago? Did you know about the time-eating parasites that infected the Tau Ceti colonies? Did you know about the reality virus that almost converted the entire Andromeda communication array into a gateway for hungry entities from outside our dimension?" The Council members looked at each other in shock. They had never heard of any of these things. "No," the Admiral continued. "You did not know because we made sure you did not have to know. We dealt with these problems quietly, in the shadows, so that you could sleep peacefully in your beds." The image changed. Now it showed star charts with red dots scattered across them. Hundreds of red dots, thousands. "Each of these dots represents a threat that we have been containing," the Admiral said. "Ancient weapons, sleeping monsters, cosmic plagues, reality storms, things that were old when your species were still crawling out of their oceans." The red dots began to pulse. These threats are still there. They have always been there. The only thing keeping them contained was humanity. Our guardian stations, our patrol fleets, our scientists and soldiers and engineers working in secret to keep the galaxy safe. More red dots appeared, then more. But you exiled us. You told us we were too dangerous to live among civilized beings, so we left, and we took our protection with us. The Council chamber was completely silent. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped working. "Now you will learn what this galaxy is really like," Admiral Torres said. "You will learn what we have been protecting you from. You will learn why we were willing to be hated and feared and exiled, as long as it meant innocent people could live in peace." The image began to fade. "You wanted us gone," the Admiral said, "but the monsters we kept away are still here. And they are waking up." The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody in the bunker moved. Then alarms began to sound throughout the galaxy. Dr. Kethvar had not slept in 3 days. His many eyes burned from staring at ancient records, but he could not stop searching. Every document he found made the situation worse. The revelation had started small. After Admiral Torres's message, government archivists across the galaxy began digging through their oldest files. They were looking for any mention of the threats the humans claimed to have been fighting. At first they found nothing. The official history spoke of a peaceful galaxy where major conflicts were rare, but Dr. Kethvar was looking in the right places. Hidden in the deepest archives of the Galactic Historical Society were files that had been classified so long ago that everyone had forgotten they existed. Files about events that had been deliberately erased from public memory. Files about humanity's secret war against things that should not exist. The first document he found was about something called the Rigel Incident. According to the public records, there had been a minor solar flare near Rigel 30 years ago. Some communication satellites had been damaged. No big deal. The classified file told a different story. A cult of fanatics had built a massive ritual site in the empty space between Rigel and its closest planet. They were trying to sacrifice the entire solar system to entities from another dimension, entities that fed on the death of stars. The ritual had almost worked. Rigel had begun to collapse inward, its nuclear fires going out. 8 billion people on the planets around it had less than 48 hours to live. Then a human task force had appeared. They had fought a battle against things that existed partially outside normal space. things that could not be damaged by conventional weapons. The humans had used devices that twisted space-time itself into weapons. They had torn holes in reality and thrown the cultists and their alien masters into the void between dimensions. When it was over, they had restarted Rigel's nuclear fires and erased all evidence that anything had happened. The official story about solar flares was a cover-up to prevent panic. Dr. Kethvar found dozens of similar files. The Battle of the Tau Ceti Mind Plague, the destruction of the Andromeda Gate incident, the war against the probability pirates. Each one described horrors that the galaxy had never heard about. Each one had been resolved by humans working in secret, but the most terrifying files were the ones about things that were still out there. Still sleeping, still waiting. The Devourers were the oldest entry in the files. They were machines older than most galaxies. Nobody knew who had built them or why. They wandered through space, consuming planets and stars and using the energy to build more of themselves. They could not be reasoned with or negotiated with. They existed only to consume. Thousands of years ago, they had been put into a kind of sleep by an ancient civilization that no longer existed. Guardian stations had been built to maintain that sleep, to keep the Devourers from waking up. For the past 2 centuries, humans had been maintaining those Guardian stations. Now the humans were gone. The Guardian stations were failing, and the Devourers were beginning to stir. Dr. Kethvar's hands shook as he read the technical specifications. Each Devourer was the size of a small moon. Their armor could withstand the explosion of a star. Their weapons could crack planets in half, and there were thousands of them sleeping in the dark spaces between galaxies. He tried to contact the Science Council, but the communication networks were still down. He tried to send messages to other researchers, but most of them were dealing with their own crises. The galaxy was falling apart, and nobody had time to listen to warnings about ancient monsters. So Dr. Kethvar did the only thing he could do. He began broadcasting his findings on every frequency he could access. Emergency channels, military networks, even entertainment broadcasts. He sent out everything he had learned about humanity's secret protection of the galaxy. At first, nobody believed him. The files he had found seemed too fantastic to be real. Cults trying to sacrifice solar systems, mind plagues that could infect entire planets, pirates who stole probability itself. But then other researchers began finding their own classified files. Archaeologists discovered ancient warning beacons that had been hidden for millennia. Military historians found battle reports about conflicts that had never been publicly acknowledged. The truth spread like wildfire through what remained of the galactic communication network. For 200 years, humanity had been fighting a secret war against cosmic horrors. They had done it quietly, efficiently, and without asking for credit or recognition. They had been the galaxy's immune system, destroying threats before most people even knew they existed. And the galaxy had repaid them by voting to exile them from civilized space. On Vorthak Prime, the crystal beings who had lost their reality warping powers tried to access their oldest memory crystals. These crystals contained the entire history of their species, going back millions of years. What they found in those crystals changed everything. The oldest memories spoke of a time when their homeworld had been dying. A cosmic plague had infected their sun, turning its light toxic to all crystalline life. The Vorthak had been weeks away from extinction. Then beings from a small, distant world had arrived. Beings who called themselves humans. They had studied the plague and found a way to cure it. They had saved not just the Vorthak homeworld, but dozens of other crystal worlds throughout the galaxy. The Vorthak had offered to share their reality-warping technology and gratitude. But the humans had asked for something else instead. They had asked the Vorthak to forget that they had ever been saved, to edit the memory of their rescue out of history. The humans had not wanted credit. They had not wanted gratitude. They had just wanted to help. Similar discoveries were being made on worlds throughout the galaxy. The Melodians found songs in their oldest archives that told of humans who had died protecting their homeworld from an invasion of silence creatures that devoured sound itself. The Zephyrians discovered records of human engineers who had prevented their sun from going supernova by working inside its corona for months, many of them dying from radiation exposure. Every species had been saved by humans at some point. Every species owed their continued existence to human sacrifice and dedication. And every species had forgotten, because the humans had asked them to forget. Dr. Kethvar compiled all of these discoveries into a massive report. He called it the hidden history of galactic protection. He transmitted it to every surviving government in the galaxy. The report was devastating. It showed that humanity had not been the galaxy's greatest threat. They had been its greatest protectors. They had asked for nothing in return except the right to exist alongside the species they protected, and the galaxy had thanked them by voting to throw them out. But the report came too late. Even as alien governments were reading Dr. Kethvar's findings and beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake, the consequences of their actions were already unfolding. On the edge of the Andromeda spiral arm, a guardian station that had been maintained by humans for over a century finally ran out of power. Its containment fields flickered and died. Deep beneath the surface of a dead world, something that had been sleeping for millions of years began to wake up. The first devourer opened eyes like black holes and began to remember what it was hungry for. Across the galaxy, other guardian stations were failing. Other ancient threats were stirring. The probability pirates were testing their chains. The reality wraiths were beginning to phase back into normal space. The stellar parasites were extending their feeding tendrils toward the nearest stars. The galaxy was about to discover what it looked like without human protection, and there was nowhere left to run. The first devourer emerged from the dead world of Kepler 1649c on a Tuesday. It rose from the planet's surface like a metal mountain coming to life. Its body was made of some dark material that seemed to eat light itself. When it moved, space around it rippled and bent. It was bigger than most space stations, but it moved with the fluid grace of a living thing. The Zephyrian patrol ships that detected it tried to establish communication. They sent standard first contact protocols in every known language. The Devourer's response was to extend what looked like feeding tubes from its massive hull and begin draining the energy from their ships. The patrol vessels went dark in seconds. Their crews did not have time to send a distress signal. The Devourer turned its attention to Kepler 1649c itself. The dead world had been lifeless for millions of years, but it still had mass. It still had energy locked in its atoms. The ancient machine began to consume the planet, breaking it down into its component elements and converting everything into more of itself. By the time rescue ships arrived, there was nothing left of Kepler 1649c but a cloud of glowing particles, and the Devourer was twice as large as it had been before. It began moving toward the next system. The news reached Nexus Prime 3 days later. The Council of 12, still huddled in their underground bunker, read the reports with growing horror. A machine the size of a city was eating its way through their space. It could not be reasoned with. It could not be stopped. It existed only to consume and grow. "How many Guardian stations are failing?" asked Counselor Zara. Her star-filled skin was completely dark now. The technician checking the data looked scared. 17 stations have gone offline in the past week. We estimate another 30 will fail within the month. And each station was containing something like this? We do not know. The human files Dr. Kethvar found only describe a few of the threats. But if the pattern holds, the technician's voice trailed off. Counselor Thane's scales were so black they seemed to absorb light. How many Guardian stations were there in total? According to the documents we have found, approximately 437. The silence in the bunker was complete. 437 ancient threats. 437 sleeping monsters that the humans had been keeping contained, and now they were all beginning to wake up. On the outer rim of the galaxy, another Guardian station failed. This one had been keeping something called a reality wraith in a state of dimensional phase lock. When the containment fields collapsed, the wraith slipped back into normal space for the first time in 3 million years. Reality wraiths were not machines like the Devourers. They were beings that existed partially outside the normal universe. They fed on the structure of reality itself, consuming the laws of physics that held the cosmos together. Where they went, cause and effect broke down. Time moved in circles. Matter forgot how to exist. The first sign of the wraith's presence was when the nearby star began to burn backward. Its light flowed inward instead of outward, creating a sphere of absolute darkness around the system. Ships that tried to approach found their instruments reporting impossible readings. Their navigation computers could not figure out which direction was forward. Their chronometers began counting time in reverse. A Melodian research vessel was unlucky enough to be in the system when the wraith fully manifested. The ship's final transmission was a recording of their captain, trying to describe what they were seeing. But the words came out backward and the sounds made colors instead of meaning. The laws of language itself had broken down. Across the galaxy, more Guardian stations were failing. Each failure released something worse than the last. The probability pirates emerged from their dimensional prison and immediately began rewriting the laws of chance in nearby systems. Planets suddenly found themselves in impossible orbits. Space battles ended with both sides winning and losing simultaneously. People woke up to discover that their entire civilization had a different history than they remembered. The stellar parasites attached themselves to 3 different suns and began draining their nuclear fires. The stars grew cold and dim as the parasites fed, leaving billions of people in darkness. But the parasites themselves began to glow brighter, growing larger and more powerful with each star they consumed. On Nexus Prime, panic was spreading through the population. The government tried to maintain order, but it was impossible to keep the truth secret anymore. Ancient monsters were loose in the galaxy. Whole systems were being consumed or twisted into unrecognizable forms, and there was no one left to stop them. The Council of 12 tried to contact any human vessel they could find. They sent messages into deep space, broadcasting on every frequency. They offered to restore full citizenship to humanity. They offered to make them honorary council members. They offered them anything they wanted. The messages went out into the void. No answers came back. Dr. Kethavar, working frantically in his laboratory, made one more terrible discovery. In the deepest, most classified files, he found references to something called the Final Protocol. It was humanity's last resort plan for dealing with cosmic threats that could not be contained. According to the files, if too many Guardian stations failed at once, if too many ancient threats woke up simultaneously, the humans would activate the Final Protocol. They would use weapons that could sterilize entire galactic arms, destroying both the threats and everything else in the affected regions. Dr. Kethvar realized with growing horror that the humans might be preparing to wipe out large sections of the galaxy to prevent the ancient threats from spreading. They might sacrifice billions of innocent lives to save trillions more. He tried to send this information to the Council, but before he could complete the transmission, something happened that changed everything. Admiral Torres appeared on every screen in the galaxy. He looked older than he had in his previous message. More tired, but there was something else in his eyes now. Something that might have been pity. "People of the galaxy," he said, "we have been monitoring your situation. We have seen the Guardian stations failing. We have seen the ancient threats awakening. We know that you are afraid." The Admiral paused, and for a moment his expression softened. "Despite everything that has happened between us, we cannot stand by and watch innocent people suffer. Humanity has always been willing to sacrifice for the greater good. Today will be no different." Behind him, the bridge of his ship was buzzing with activity. Officers were preparing for something big. "We are initiating Operation Guardian Angel," the Admiral said. "Human forces will re-enter galactic space. We will re-establish containment of the awakened threats. We will rebuild the Guardian stations. We will restore the protection that you have enjoyed for so long." A collective sigh of relief went through the galaxy. The humans were coming back. They would fix everything. They would make the monsters go back to sleep. But then the Admiral continued speaking, and his words turned relief into despair. "However," he said, "we cannot restore the old arrangement. Too much trust has been broken. Too much damage has been done. We cannot go back to protecting a galaxy that sees us as a threat." He looked directly into the camera, and everyone watching felt like he was speaking to them personally. "We will contain the immediate dangers. We will prevent the ancient threats from spreading further. But once that is done, humanity will withdraw beyond the galactic rim. We will build our own civilization in the dark between galaxies." The Admiral's image began to fade. "You wanted us gone," he said. "So we will go. But we will leave behind automated systems to contain the threats. Guardian stations that will run themselves. Defenses that will protect you without requiring human oversight." The transmission was almost over now. "This is humanity's final gift to the galaxy," Admiral Torres said. "We hope you use it wisely. We hope you learn from your mistakes. We hope that someday your children will build a better galaxy than the one you are leaving behind." The message ended. For days afterward, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy. They moved quickly and efficiently, re-establishing containment around the awakened threats. The Devourers were put back to sleep. The reality wraiths were phase-locked again. The probability pirates were returned to their dimensional prison, but the humans did not stay to receive thanks. As soon as each threat was contained, they moved on to the next one. They did not respond to communication attempts. They did not accept offers of alliance or friendship. They simply did their job and left. Within 6 months, new Guardian stations were in place throughout the galaxy. Automated systems that would maintain themselves for millennia. The threats were contained once again, and then the humans were gone. They vanished beyond the galactic rim, taking their technology and their knowledge with them. They left behind only their gift of protection and a galaxy full of species who finally understood what they had lost. Some said that on clear nights, if you knew where to look, you could see lights in the dark between galaxies, lights that might be human cities being built in the void. But no one knew for sure. The galaxy was safe again. But it was also alone. The species that had protected it for so long had finally given up on them. And in the cold silence of space, the automated Guardian stations kept their eternal watch.